Well, sorry about that, everybody. We had a Wi-Fi outage. I apologize. So after many weeks of Jamie, busting out of the house and stealing food, Bob and Cindy blocked the dog door. And 2 days ago, they inadvertently left it open, which was actually a good thing. And the dog stole a box of clementines. Those little things they're like tangerines. They're very sweet. And they took them out in the yard, spread them around the backyard. So these are dogs who need, they have too much time on their hands. And so the food toys, really good idea. Okay, so, but still, since that dog door's been installed, Jamie has made no attempts to escape the yard. But this dog had also been reluctant to take leash walks during fireworks. And they mentioned to me that when there were thunderstorms, she would tremble and hide. This is a dog with noise phobia, in addition with escape to intent to roam. And again, inadequate behavioral opportunities, species or canine specific. Okay? So, and they did find, by the way, historically, that during thunderstorms she made even more attempts to escape than usual. So we've got a few different diagnoses here, but the biggest problem on this thing is that this dog needs to be kept occupied, and she needs more choices. Because part of this was separation behavior, and that's why she seldom went very far from home, and that she did so much better when she had a choice between going inside and outside. So we've actually, in addition to noise phobia, we've got a few different problems going on here. So what I told Bob and Cindy was, they needed to take this dog to the dog park or to doggy daycare, and also food dispensing toys. But you have to be very careful when you have more than one dog. You end up with possibly food-related aggression. They'll compete, and that's going on when you're not there, and you can come home to a real disaster. So if your dogs have been happily sharing food and you have more than one dog, then go ahead, but it always makes me nervous. The safest thing you can do with food dispensing toys is to separate your dogs so that they can't get together. Now, of course, you could put a wire fence down the middle of the yard, and these dogs could see each other and interact, but they couldn't steal each other's food and fight over their food. But you want to keep an eye on this thing. Make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen. And so also, I told them that I made very clear how to make a digging box and how to bury the food toys. Oh, there's Gaston coming up for a little snack. But these two dogs were retrievers. And there's something really good about retrievers, and that is that they will retrieve all day long, most of them. And so I encourage these folks to get something called an iFetch. Now this is a cool device. It's small, lowercase I, F-E-T-C-H. You can find them on the internet. There's a great video on their website, and it shows a dog out in its yard, and this gizmo shoots a ball out, and the dog fetches it and puts it back in the device and waits for the ball to get shot back out. What's cool about it, in part, is that there's a variable amount of time between each time the dog puts the ball in. It might be a few seconds, it might be much longer, and it shoots it off in a different direction at a different trajectory. So it's not predictable. So the dog has to pay close attention and watch and see what the heck's going on. Oh, Vicki, thank you for coming. Sorry we had the Wi-Fi outage a little while ago. So I appreciate you being here. Of course, the whole Facebook Live will be on my Facebook page. So anyway, I also told them to make sure that they kept that dog door open, because these dogs needed choices. And finally, if they were going to have a storm predicted, typically anything over a 30%, we have people pre-treat with something like Sileo. It's this syringe, again, it's a gel, goes between the gum and the lip. If it only lasts for about 2 hours. So for dogs who are going to be home alone much longer, there's a longer acting anti-anxiety tablet that can be given as needed, and it's called Trazodone, T-R-A-Z-O-D-O-N-E. And Trazodone and Sileo, S-I-L-E-O, I know that's a mirror image this time, are prescription medications. Your veterinarian can prescribe or dispense them. And finally, there was one last factor with Ellie. She had a history of being itchy. I mean, pretty itchy. And I examined her skin during our consultation, because a thorough physical exam is essential to every behavior consultation. A recent study showed that 68 to 70% of behavior problems also have an accompanying problem elsewhere in the body. It can be trouble with the liver, it can be painful joints, it can be stomach or intestinal discomfort, skin problems that cause itching, for example. And these things can be involved in lots of behaviors, very often anxiety-related behaviors, especially allergic itching, because if a dog is anxious and somewhat itchy, the anxiety makes them more itchy. And as they become increasingly itchy, that causes more anxiety. And these problems tend to ratchet each other up. There are physiologic reasons why this happens. And you've got to put the kibosh on at least one of them, if not both. And so getting this cause of this dog's itching, Ellie's frequent scratching, when they got their arms around that and their regular general practicing veterinarian took care of that, helped this dog feel much better, all of her anxiety-related behaviors diminished and she became much easier to manage. So, what are we going to do with this thing? That was one last cause, by the way. Oh, Vicky, our girl constantly itches a lot and excessively grooms. Wonder if it's anxiety-related. It may be. It would be very easy to say, well, if this dog weren't so darn anxious, she would be less itchy. And that's probably true. But there is at least one cause for the anxiety and at least one cause for the itching. And so we always start by understanding all of the other physical systems in the body, and we get to the behaviors. It all comes from this organ up here, the brain, and we get to that last. Because there's not much sense in treating a behavior disorder only to find that, gosh, we would have actually been a lot more successful and more helpful had we unraveled the physical problems that were elsewhere in the body. So you need to go to your regular veterinarian, Vicky, and ask to have skin testing if necessary, skin scrapings for sure. If there are lesions, what we call impression smears with a slide. We'll put a special stain and look for yeast and bacteria on the skin. Some of these things need topical treatment. Some of them need oral antibiotics or oral medications to reduce the itch. Corticosteroids like prednisone are still used, sometimes necessary, but we have some much newer, much safer, and more effective medications now for chronic itching dogs from allergies. Some of them need a food trial because they're food allergic. So the whole skin thing is pretty complicated, and it needs serious attention with your dog. And after that is under control, or during that time at least, we can start dealing with the behavior problem, understanding that we need to manage them both and get them both under control. The last point I wanted to make about dogs who get out of the yard isn't necessarily dogs who try to get out of the yard, but if they have a wire fence in particular, and there's another dog next door, and you notice them running back and forth and getting aggressive and growling and just acting like they're going to rip each other's throats out on either side of the fence, and you say, well, they're not going to get to each other, they're not getting through the fence. Well, that happens sometimes, where they get so intensely aggressive and hostile because they haven't been allowed to do what's natural to dogs, which is to interact. And of course, this isn't practical, but for the sake of discussion, if there were never a fence between your yard and your neighbor's, then your dogs would get out there and very likely say hello. Some rear end sniffing, a little competitive urinating, swapping a few jokes. They do poke fun and make sport of us. We just don't know it. And those dogs would not have a problem. But we put what we call this artificial barrier, a fence between these dogs. And because they can't do what dogs naturally should be able to do in their social, interactive ways, they can start getting agitated at each other. And I've known cases where a dog has finally gotten through or under a fence, and the damage can be substantial. So what I tell folks like that is you want to put a kibosh on that fence fighting nonsense. And so there are these vinyl fence covers that are pretty inexpensive, and you can pull over a wire fence so the dogs can't see each other. And cutting off the visual access makes a very big difference on most of these. There are other ways of doing it too. Obviously, you could invest in a real serious block wall, for example, but you'll be spending real money. And these fence covers are generally pretty darn effective. So do what it takes. Don't let this fence fighting nonsense continue, because that's another way of getting out of a yard and getting into big, big trouble. So thank you for visiting with me. And I hope Oh, wait, Vicki, oh, you were talking about a new foster kitty. In here, I thought you were, it was about a dog. Well, with cats, you typically, cats can get separation anxiety. Thank you for the hearts, I finally caught on. Cats can certainly have separation anxiety, and many people assume that they don't because they don't do what dogs do, who have that severe panic when left alone, because cats don't try to rip their way out of the house. They don't chew holes in the couch. But what they do tend to do very often is urine soil. And if you leave a home surveillance camera like a Nest Cam, they're very inexpensive, or you can prop your smartphone up against a couple of books if you want, and shoot some video of your pets while you're gone. If you find that your cat is walking around crying, vocalizing, the kind of behavior you don't see when you're at home, you've probably got a separation anxiety with that cat. And if you come home to find urine soiling that never occurs at other times, that is often a very big tip-off. Now, some cats will overgroom. They'll lick the insides of their front legs or the insides of their thighs or the underside of their lower abdomen toward the rear end of their body. They'll overgroom and lick a lot of this hair off, and that can be an indicator of anxiety, but actually more often it's an allergic skin problem. Occasionally cats will have these mange problems that can be found on skin scraping, and they can be treated very safely and effectively. In other cases, we don't find the mange, and if we have still strong reason to suspect, these treatments are very, very safe, and they're actually 100% effective, which not a lot of things in medicine are. So treatment and figuring out what's going on with that skin problem, whether it's a cat or a dog, I'm going to give you strong encouragement with that. So thank you, everybody, for your patience with our Wi-Fi disaster. We went dark there for a little while, but that's what I have to report today. I really appreciate your coming. If you've got any suggestions for Facebook Live events for the future, by all means, put them on my Facebook page. Tag friends who have these kinds of issues with their dogs, or even if they don't, because I'm going to try to cover over the next many years with Facebook Lives all the different behavior and many physical disorders that I can to try to keep pet parents informed so you can do a good job of caring for your pets, because, well, they're pretty darn important to us. And you can get these Facebook Lives every week, every Tuesday morning in your email box, along with my weekly media blog, which is published in the Albuquerque Journal the Friday previously. All you have to do is go to my website, which is drjeffnicol.com, drjeffnicol.com, and you'll be able to subscribe, which is no charge. And when you do, you'll get at no cost my free at-home pet first aid and CPR guide, which printing that stuff out and having it handy can be a lifesaver. So again, I hope everybody has a good weekend, and any questions come up about anything regarding pets, at least, because that's my area of knowledge, behavior as well as other problems, you're always welcome to send me those questions on my Facebook page. So thanks, and have a great evening.